They handed him the crown because they loved him. 3 months later, they used that same love as kindling for his execution pyre. His crime was not tyranny, but a desperate, pathetic need to be adored. What if I told you the affection you crave, the approval you work so tirelessly to secure, is the very poison that will guarantee your downfall? What if the path to true power, to a legacy carved in stone, begins with the cold, liberating decision to be respected, never merely liked? This is the great tragic error of the idealist. It is the foundational flaw in the thinking of 99% of humanity. You have been taught that success is a function of popularity, that to lead, you must be loved, that to influence, you must be agreeable. This is a noble lie, a comforting fairy tale told to domesticate the ambitious and to keep the masses manageable, predictable, and weak. You believe that your greatest asset is your affability, your willingness to compromise, your talent for making others feel comfortable. You see yourself as a builder of bridges, a weaver of consensus. But in the unforgiving calculus of power, you are nothing more than a servant to the whims of others. You are a prisoner in a cell of your own making, and the bars are forged from the desperate need for approval. Every time you soften your opinion to avoid offense, you surrender a piece of your sovereignty. Every time you delay a necessary but unpopular decision, you broadcast your own weakness. Every time you measure your worth by the number of smiles you receive, instead of the results you command, you are digging your own grave. This need to please is a poison that works slowly, but its effects are absolute. It paralyzes the will. It clouds the judgment. It transforms a potential prince into a court jester, dancing for the fleeting applause of an audience that will forget him the moment he stumbles. The world is not a stage for a popularity contest. It is a brutal arena where power is taken, not given, and power does not respect the agreeable. It despises them. Human nature, in its raw and unfiltered state, is a creature of self-interest. It is fickle, ungrateful, and opportunistic. The man who builds his fortress on the shifting sands of public affection will find himself homeless after the first storm. People are drawn to the pleasant in the way a fly is drawn to honey, but they do not respect the honey. They consume it. They are, however, compelled to respect the fire. They admire its warmth from a distance, but they are acutely aware of the consequences of touching it. Your constant effort to be the honey makes you a resource to be consumed. It makes you predictable, exploitable, and ultimately disposable. Contempt is the shadow that follows the man who is too eager to please. The world does not respect a mirror that only reflects what it wants to see. It respects a hammer that shapes the world into what it must be. This is the first and most difficult truth you must accept. Your desire to be liked is your greatest strategic vulnerability. It is the open gate through which your enemies will ride, not with swords and shields, but with smiles and hollow praise, all while dismantling your empire from within. Now let us discard these childish idealisms and speak of the world as it is, not as we wish it were. There is another path, a path dictated not by sentiment, but by a cold, pragmatic understanding of human nature. This is the path of the prince, the path of the architect of authority. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this fundamental truth. The architecture of lasting power is built not on the flimsy scaffolding of affection, but on the granite bedrock of respect. And respect in its most potent form is a close cousin of fear. Not the fear that breeds hatred, for a hated ruler is a ruler on the precipice of ruin, but the fear that commands obedience. The deep, instinctual understanding that your words have weight, your decisions have consequences, and your will is an indomitable force. The first principle of this philosophy is a liberation from the tyranny of conventional morality. You must, as Machiavelli advised, learn how not to be good. This is not an invitation to wanton cruelty or chaos. It is the grant of permission to be effective. It is the understanding that the virtues praised in private life, humility, generosity, forgiveness, can be fatal liabilities in the public square. The prince knows that virtue and vice are not moral absolutes, but tools in a strategic arsenal to be deployed according to the needs of the situation. To maintain the state, which is to say, to protect your power, your legacy, and your objectives, you must be willing to act in ways that would make the idealist recoil in horror. You must have the courage to be severe when severity is required, to be cunning when deception is the only path, and to prioritize the stability of your enterprise over the comfort of your conscience. This leads us to the essential dichotomy. Love, Machiavelli writes, is held by a chain of obligation which, because men are wretched creatures, is broken at every opportunity for their own profit. But fear is held by a dread of punishment which never fails. Affection is a gift given to you by others. It is conditional, volatile, and can be withdrawn at any moment. Respect, however, is a structure you build yourself. It is a fortress whose walls are your demonstrated competence, whose towers are your unshakable resolve, and whose moat is the clear and predictable consequences of defying you. The man who is merely liked is constantly anxious, forever seeking to please a crowd that has no true loyalty to him. The man who is respected is calm. He does not need to seek validation, for his authority is self-evident. He has traded the fleeting warmth of applause for the enduring power of reverence. He has chosen to be the architect of his own destiny, not a supplicant to the opinions of others. This is the choice before you. You can continue to live in the captivity of approval, a gilded cage where you are loved today and devoured tomorrow. Or you can begin the difficult, lonely work of building a true architecture of authority. You can exchange the hollow currency of being liked for the pure gold of being respected. The choice is yours, but only one path leads to a throne that endures. For the chains of affection are forged by others, but the throne of respect is built with your own hands. Comment: authority over approval, to declare your independence, and subscribe to learn how to build your fortress. You have made the foundational choice. You have elected to abandon the gilded cage of approval and to begin the arduous task of constructing an empire of genuine authority. But a decision without the means of execution is merely a wish. An architect's blueprint is worthless without stone, steel, and the instruments to shape them. We now move from the realm of philosophy to the science of application. To command respect is not a matter of charisma or birthright. It is a matter of wielding precise instruments with unwavering resolve. These are the tools that separate the fleetingly popular from the eternally powerful. These are the instruments of enduring dominion. The first and most misunderstood of these is what we shall call the economy of severity. The common mind confuses severity with cruelty, imagining it as the brutish, impulsive rage of a tyrant. This is a fatal error. Cruelty is a passion. Severity is a science. Cruelty is a fire that consumes everything, including its wielder. Severity is a scalpel employed with precision, coolness, and a clear strategic objective, to excise a sickness before it can corrupt the entire body. The prince who is truly effective understands that certain moments demand actions that will appear harsh. A disloyal subordinate must be removed. A failing project must be terminated without sentiment. A challenge to authority must be met with an immediate and decisive response. The idealist hesitates. He worries about feelings, about appearances, about being disliked. He applies his punishments in small, hesitant doses, hoping to minimize the pain. In doing so, he achieves the opposite. He prolongs the agony, signals his own weakness, and transforms a necessary act of surgery into a campaign of torture. This is what Machiavelli called cruelty badly used, for it fails to secure the state and only succeeds in generating a festering resentment. The master of strategy, however, understands that severity is a resource to be used economically. It must be swift, resolute, and utterly conclusive. All injuries, Machiavelli instructs, should be inflicted at once. The shock is profound. The lesson is immediate. And because it is over quickly, the memory of it can begin to fade, replaced by the stability that follows. It is like a violent storm that clears the air. People may fear the storm, but they are grateful for the calm it brings. The leader who has the courage to be the storm when necessary, to make the hard choice and absorb the immediate backlash for the sake of long-term order, earns a profound and unshakable form of respect. He is seen not as a brute but as a realist, a guardian who is willing to do the unpleasant things that others are too timid to even contemplate. This calculated application of severity is the first pillar of authority. It establishes the boundaries. It demonstrates that actions have consequences. It teaches the world that your will is not a suggestion, but a law. Yet, this instrument is a double-edged sword. Wield it without wisdom, and you will find yourself isolated and despised. This brings us to the second principle, the construction of the fortress against hatred and contempt. Machiavelli is explicit. A prince need not be loved, but he must make himself feared in such a way that if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. For there is a vast and critical difference between being feared and being hated. Fear is a form of deference to power. It is a rational calculation of risk. Hatred is a personal, emotional poison that fuels conspiracies and invites rebellion. A hated ruler is never safe. Similarly, he must avoid contempt. A man who is feared is taken seriously. A man who is despised is seen as a joke, an obstacle to be circumvented or ignored. His authority is a hollow shell. How then does one build this fortress? By demonstrating unshakable consistency, and by refraining from arbitrary violations of two sacred domains, people's property and their honor. In a modern sense, property is not just land or gold. It is the credit for one's work, the security of one's position, the fruits of one's labor. The leader who steals credit, who dismisses loyal servants on a whim, or who seizes resources without cause, is plundering his subjects. This is the fastest path to earning their undying hatred. Likewise, honor represents a person's dignity. The leader who engages in public humiliation, who rules through mockery and personal insults, invites contempt. He shows himself to be petty and undisciplined. The fortress is built by ensuring that every severe action is framed not as a personal vendetta, but as the impersonal application of a principle. The disloyal subordinate is not removed because you dislike him. He is removed because he violated a known and established rule. The failing project is not terminated because of your impatience. It is terminated because it failed to meet clear, predefined metrics. By creating this logical justification for every act, you build a reputation for being tough, but fair. You become a force of nature which may be feared, but cannot be hated for being what it is. The final instrument is the engine that drives all others. It is the very source of legitimacy. It is the manifestation of virtù. This Italian word has no direct English equivalent. It is not virtue in the moral sense. Virtù is a dynamic combination of prowess, courage, strategic genius, and the sheer force of will to impose your vision upon the world. It is tangible excellence in action. Respect is not ultimately given to a title or a position. It is given to the evident virtù of the person who holds it. A general with a history of brilliant victories commands the reverence of his soldiers. A founder who has navigated their company through crisis after crisis earns the deference of their employees. They have demonstrated their ability to master their circumstances. They have shown that they are not merely passengers of fate, but captains of it. This is the eternal struggle Machiavelli identified between virtù and fortuna. Fortune is the raging river of chance, the unpredictable chaos of events that threatens to overwhelm all human endeavor. Most people are swept away by this river. They are victims of circumstance, forever reacting, never commanding. The man of virtù, however, does not try to stop the river. He accepts its power, but he then has the audacity and the skill to build levees, dams, and canals. He harnesses the raw energy of fortune and redirects it to serve his own purposes. Every time you solve an intractable problem, every time you anticipate a crisis and neutralize it, every time you turn a disadvantage into an advantage, you are manifesting your virtù. This is what truly captivates the human imagination and commands deep-seated respect. People will follow a leader they fear, but they will charge into the gates of hell for a leader whose competence they believe to be almost supernatural. Your virtù is the ultimate justification for your power. It is the silent, irrefutable argument that you deserve to be in command. Without it, your severity is just brutality, and your fortress against hatred is merely a prison. With it, you are not just a ruler, you are a force to be reckoned with. You now possess the instruments of power. You understand the calculated use of severity, the necessity of the fortress against hatred, and the supreme importance of manifesting virtù. But these are merely tools. A sword is useless in the hands of a man who has not first conquered himself. A fortress is worthless if its commander is a slave to his own passions. We now turn from the external battlefield to the internal one, to the most crucial and difficult arena of all, the theater of the human mind. For power is not a physical object to be held, but a perception to be cultivated in the minds of others. And to direct this grand performance, you must first become the absolute master of the actor at its center, yourself. This is the first and greatest conquest, dominion over the self. Before you can command armies or corporations, you must command the riot of impulses that constitute your own soul. The most dangerous of these is not fear, nor anger, nor greed, but the insidious, gnawing hunger for validation. This hunger is the traitor within the gates of your own mind. It whispers that you should soften your stance, that you should seek consensus, that the silence of a dissenter is more valuable than the truth of your conviction. It begs you to trade a pound of authority for an ounce of affection. The true prince learns not just to ignore this voice, but to despise it. He cultivates an inner citadel, a fortress of mental sovereignty, from which he observes the world with cold, dispassionate clarity. He understands that emotional reactions are a form of servitude. To be provoked is to be controlled. To need praise is to hand your puppet strings to the praiser. This inner dominion projects an aura of impenetrable self-sufficiency. People are instinctively drawn to and intimidated by those who seem to need nothing from them. The man who is unflustered by criticism and unmoved by flattery is a gravitational force. He operates on a different plane, governed by his own internal calculus of consequence, not by the shifting ghosts of public opinion. This is not about becoming a heartless automaton. Emotions are to be understood, harnessed, and, when strategically necessary, performed. But they must never ever be the master. The first victory of a prince is not on the battlefield. It is in the silent, solitary throne room of his own mind, where he declares his absolute independence from the opinions of others. Only from this seat of total self-possession can he begin the real work, the deliberate and masterful engineering of his public reputation. Reputation is the armor and the weapon of the prince. It is the silent ambassador that enters a room long before he does. For the vast majority of people, this reputation is not a reflection of who you are. It is who you are. Machiavelli stated that men judge more by what they see than by what they feel. Everyone sees your appearance, but few touch your reality. Your task, then, is not to be a certain kind of person, but to construct the unassailable appearance of one. This is the art of engineering perception. Every public act, every spoken word, every calculated silence, every strategic absence is a chisel strike upon the marble of your public persona. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is without purpose. The reputation you must build is one of granite-like resolve. Your will must be perceived as an elemental force. When you set a course, it is followed. When you issue a decree, it is enacted. Hesitation, public doubt, or the act of reversing a decision under pressure are cracks in the foundation of your authority. They signal to the world that your will is negotiable, that you can be swayed by popular clamor or the machinations of your rivals. The prince, therefore, cultivates an aura of inevitability. His decisions are not presented as choices to be debated, but as realities to be accepted. He moves with a quiet certainty that makes opposition seem not just futile, but absurd. This reputation is built piece by piece, through a history of unbroken promises and fulfilled threats. Your word becomes a bond, and your warnings become prophecies. People will cease to challenge a will that they have learned, through painful experience, is as reliable as the rising of the sun. This brings us to the most subtle and potent element of this theater of power, the mask of predictability as an instrument of control. The unsophisticated ruler believes power lies in caprice, in keeping everyone guessing. He rules by whim and terror. This is the strategy of a fool. It breeds chaos, encourages conspiracies, and ultimately makes the ruler a prisoner of his own unpredictability, for he can trust no one. The masterful estratega does the opposite. He constructs a mask not of kindness, but of an almost divine, implacable justice. He creates a system of rules, consequences, and principles, and presents himself as merely the chief servant of that system. This mask is your most powerful tool of control. By establishing a clear, predictable set of laws, excellence will be rewarded, disloyalty will be excised, failure to meet standards will result in removal. You create an environment where people police themselves. They know the rules of the game. They understand the consequences. Your severe actions are no longer seen as personal attacks, but as the logical, unavoidable outcomes of a system they themselves chose to test. This depersonalizes your power and makes it infinitely more stable. You are no longer a man making decisions. You are the embodiment of a principle. You are justice, you are consequence, you are order. This provides a strange and powerful form of security for those under you. In a chaotic world, they know where they stand. They may fear the system, but they respect its consistency. This is how you command obedience without inspiring hatred. The mask you wear is not one of friendship, for friendship invites the fatal disease of familiarity. The mask you wear is that of the architect, the stern, dispassionate, but ultimately predictable creator of a world in which every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It is a world of your design, and by flawlessly playing the role of its chief enforcer, you ensure that everyone, willingly or not, plays their part in the grand theater of your enduring power. You have journeyed into the shadows of human nature. You have been armed with the cold instruments of authority. You have waged and won the silent war against the self. But knowledge without action is a shadow without a form, and authority that is not cemented in a definitive act is merely a prelude to its own collapse. The final lessons are the most profound, for they concern the transition from strategy to legacy. This is the art of the masterstroke and the science of permanence. Before we reveal how to forge a dominion that outlasts its creator, ensure you are subscribed, for the ultimate wisdom of power is reserved for those who intend to cheat time itself. The moment will come. It always does. In the chaotic flow of events, fortune, that great and fickle arbiter of human affairs, will present you with an opportunity. It will arrive disguised as a crisis, a rival's fatal misstep, a moment of profound instability, or a schism within the ranks. The masses will see chaos. The idealist will see a threat. But you, the prince, will see a doorway. This is the instant for which all your preparation has been forged. It is the moment to unleash your virtue in a single, decisive act of creation and destruction. This is the founder's stroke, the maneuver that fundamentally and irrevocably resets the chessboard in your favor. It is not merely a move within the existing game. It is the act of establishing an entirely new game, with new rules of which you are the sole author. This is the practical application of Machiavelli's most chilling and misunderstood advice, that injuries should be inflicted all at once. The founder's stroke is that injury. It is a controlled demolition of the old order. It must be executed with breathtaking speed, surgical precision, and an absolute absence of hesitation. This might be the public and final removal of a long-festering source of dissent, the radical restructuring of a department, or the bold and unpopular decision that sacrifices a short-term comfort for a long-term strategic victory. The act itself must be so conclusive that it renders all previous assumptions obsolete. It must be so audacious that it silences all potential challengers, not through overt threats, but through a sudden and profound recalibration of what they thought was possible. They must look at the new landscape you have created and realize with a mixture of terror and awe that the world they knew yesterday is gone forever. This act, while momentarily painful, is a mercy. Its swiftness prevents the long, agonizing decay of 1,000 smaller cuts. Its finality cauterizes the wound and prevents infection. It is the terrible, beautiful violence of a star being born from a collapsing nebula. But the masterstroke, for all its pyrotechnic brilliance, is a fleeting event. It is a lightning flash that illuminates the landscape. The true measure of genius is what you build in that new, stark light. The amateur celebrates his victory. The prince immediately begins to consolidate it. This is the most critical phase, for the moments after a great shock are when the foundations of a new reality are poured. Your enemies are stunned, your allies are watchful, and the masses are malleable, awaiting a new direction. To hesitate now is to lose everything. Your work is not done, it has just begun. The goal is to transform the temporary state of shock into a permanent state of order. This is achieved by moving from personal will to institutionalized power. You must immediately begin the relentless process of building the structures that will perpetuate your new order. You will write new laws. You will establish new protocols. You will create new traditions and rituals that reinforce the new hierarchy. Every process, from how a meeting is conducted to how a promotion is earned, must be redesigned to reflect and solidify the reality you have just forged. You are not merely a conqueror who has taken a city. You are a founder who is building a new Rome. You install a new political and social operating system. The purpose of this frenetic construction is to make your power impersonal. It must cease to be a function of your daily presence and become embedded in the very fabric of the organization, the state, the system you command. The rules you create must become the new common sense. The structures you erect must become the landscape that everyone navigates. Eventually, people will obey not because they fear you, but because they cannot conceive of an alternative. The system you have built becomes reality itself. This is how you transform a victory into a dynasty. And so we arrive at the final philosophical truth of power. The journey we have taken is not one from kindness to cruelty. It is the journey from idealism to realism. The idealist who chases affection builds his house with sand and good intentions, and is inevitably consumed by the chaos he refuses to acknowledge. His legacy is a cautionary tale. The prince, the realist, understands that the universe is an inherently chaotic and indifferent place. He does not seek to be loved by it. He seeks to impose a small, temporary but meaningful pocket of order upon it. He is an artist whose medium is human nature and whose canvas is reality. The respect he commands is not an end in itself. It is the necessary energy source for the engine of creation. The supreme power is not about ruling over others. It is the power to build something that endures. A throne is merely a chair. A crown is a piece of metal. But a well-ordered state, a thriving company, a resilient system, this is a living legacy. It is a structure that functions, adapts, and survives even after its architect is gone. The ultimate triumph is not to be remembered, but to have built something that no longer requires your memory to sustain it. This is the final liberation from the ego. It is the understanding that true power is not to be held, but to be wielded in the service of creating a lasting order. You have learned to see the world as it is, and you have been given the tools to act upon that vision. Now you must choose what to build, for in the end, a prince is not judged by the love he received or the fear he inspired, but by the stability and endurance of the state he leaves behind. That is the only throne that conquers mortality.